Come on up, Lars. 7.8.
Thankful that missing time.
Thought he just wanted to see the meeting.
Consideration of update on Lake County Recreation Center efforts, public services. Director Ewing.
Right. Good morning, Lars Ewing, Public Services Director. For the board's consideration, this is intended to be a brief update on the status of what we're calling the Lake County Recreation Center Task Force, for lack of an official term. As the board will recall, as well as Supervisor Green from his time on the City Council, last September, the board received, and as did the City Council, a presentation on a feasibility study of a recreation center or a swimming pool located in Lake County. That was at the time, the culmination of a multi-year effort between the county and the two cities. The feasibility study is included as an attachment to the agenda item. There's actually two. There's a phase one and a phase two. Phase two essentially is just the final report. At that time in September, the board's direction was to continue participation for a future project development and further investigate the potential of a joint powers authority. The following month, a presentation was given to county and city representatives from consultants who have a lot of expertise in the areas of establishing JPAs, both on the financing side and on the legal side. The consensus from that meeting was to move the concept forward of a potential JPA. Specifically a JPA for a countywide recreation agency, and also to conduct preliminary polling. Also included in those in the attachment are slides from that presentation. That was not presented to the board as a whole, so I wanted to ensure that they were provided here. The joint powers agreement is currently under review by staff at all three jurisdictions, and in about a month, we're assuming in about a month, we will be coming to the board for consideration of that joint powers authority. And so we thought it was important to ensure that we come to the board to get a status check and are we headed in the right direction? Also going on right now is a polling strategy, the development of a scientific polling rather than just the general outreach that was done during the feasibility stage. Now, I think we're well aware that the financial needs of this project are not insignificant, both on the capital side and on the operational side, even if the project scope is refined from what was presented in the feasibility study. There are a variety of different potential funding mechanisms. Some examples: direct facility use revenue, jurisdiction contributions, other partnering agency contributions, state and federal requests, grants, donations, and joint use agreements. The JPA, if approved, could form a countywide community facilities district and place a ballot measure for voter approval of a special tax. The question is, would it be a parcel tax? Would it be a sales tax? That's not defined at this point. It's a part of the polling effort that is intended to go forward. It also could be a graduated parcel tax based on a variety of factors: distance from facility, square footage, zoning. There's all sorts of potential ideas. And again, we're not limiting it to simply a parcel tax. The proposed membership of the JPA Board of Directors, as proposed in the Joint Powers Agreement that we are drafting, it does include representation from each of the jurisdictions, as well as a resident at large appointed by the other board members of the JPA. So the next steps right now, as I mentioned, the polling is in development. The JPA has been drafted. The agreement itself has been drafted, and will come to the board very soon. And then next month, the consideration of that joint powers agreement. So at this point, I didn't have a presentation. Wanted to ensure that you are aware of where your staff is in working with the two cities, and just get any direction from me and also through me to that entire task force. So appreciate any questions and any comments that you might have.
Supervisor Spatier.
I know that you've brought these numbers, but just kind of curious, do we know what an annual, approximately based on the feasibility study and what we're looking at, what the annual needs would be in order to operate?
Yeah. So depending upon the facility, as a reminder, there were two facilities or two types of facilities that were envisioned during the feasibility study. One was a pool center, and the other was a recreation center. For the recreation center, based on estimates, the annual net operational subsidy was somewhere in the range of $300,000 to $400,000. For the pool, and again, this is based on the size of the facilities that were envisioned in the feasibility study. For an indoor pool, bear with me here. It was about $400,000 for an annual net operational subsidy.
And then, obviously, you're saying net, there's a belief that a certain percentage will be covered just from usage fees, club fees, monthly passes, whatever it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I just want to highlight, I think it was a comment that seemed to echo for the Board of Supervisors. I'll mention it personally, that I want to make sure we're thinking about the people outside of the city areas. They're going to be looking to, if it passes or if it goes to the voters as a property tax or as a sales tax, there needs to be a, what do I get out of this type of
Yes.
thought process put into it. And if we're only singling out the cities as the main locations without looking to expand further, I think that we would lose those votes. And so I hope that the conversation continues by remembering Middletown, by remembering the North Shore, and others that are outside of the city areas. Sorry if I didn't state your specific location that is outside of the city areas. But just wanted to highlight that because I think it's really important because those votes are going to make or break whatever is proposed.
Yep. And that's, I appreciate you bringing that up. That has been a point of emphasis all along and a concern with just these two facilities. Obviously, these are the ones that we did the feasibility study for, but consideration of the more remote locations, at least. I mean, unincorporated means not very far from here, right? I mean, we're really just outside of the city limits is unincorporated, but what we're really talking about are say North Shore, South County, making sure these areas that if we had facilities in each of the two incorporated cities, how are we providing recreation facilities that would justify a community facilities district for citizens who don't have direct access to that? There are a variety of options with that. It could mean facilities that are in those areas, improving existing facilities, but also coordination with transportation. We talk about Lake Transit Authority. I've had conversations about that. So there's no answer. I don't have an answer to say, here's what we're proposing in the North Shore. Here's what we're proposing in Middletown. But the way that the JPA is drafted, it's not limited to just these two facilities. It allows recreation facilities that would serve the community at large.
Thank you.
And I just have a comment about a measure for a tax. Depending on what district you live in, you're already heavily levied in different areas. And I would say for maybe the sales tax would be a more successful route, and that way all the residents are contributing, because in certain districts, there are quite a few assessments that are already on the rolls.
Sure.
And that will affect how people make that decision.
Yeah, and by no means is the parcel tax the one we're looking at. Sales tax is still on the table with the concerns that you mentioned. The polling that we're developing, that's why we're doing the polling. Is this viable? Or do we have any interest in this by the public to pursue this? The establishment of a JPA, as I understand it, is rather administrative in nature. But to move forward with a community facilities district would really be the meat to get the funding behind it, and that would require that's going to require some additional funding above and beyond what we have. So the polling is really going to help drive that. It will include questions that will help inform us about parcel tax, sales tax, other opportunities. So it's informative.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. I know this update just no action today, but as it was when it was presented over the city, it's a big lift. It's good to dream big, but all the financial analysis done so far indicates it's going to cost us big to dream that big. And although this is focused on the creation of the JPA and these needs that are kind of unmet in our community, I just want to compare and contrast again, just because I'm educating myself on the existing collateral the county has in its portfolio for park facilities and stuff like that. So before I go too far down JPA landia to get into this new vision for these facilities and not to discount the need for them and the community's interest in them, I just want to catch up a little bit to where the county is currently with its financing and operation of its current recreation facilities.
Sure. Well, I'd be happy to come back at the next board meeting with a presentation on that, where we are with county facilities. I mean, we have but the mid-year budget, would be an opportunity to discuss that. I don't have it at my disposal right here, the exact numbers, but I do know relatively well my own budget, certainly. And so we do have a Parks and Recreation budget that funds on a recurring basis, essentially the maintenance of our approximately 24 parks. I say approximately because what one person might call a park, another person might call a boat launch. So it's approximately. But we do have funding to maintain those facilities. The improvement of those facilities or any other proposed facilities is typically handled on a one-time funding basis. That's the best way that we can put it. There was discussion a few months ago, I believe, or possibly at budget adoption, discussion of a recurring reserve for improvements, basically a capital budget for improvement projects. So we don't have that, but we do have above and beyond the one-time funding. We have grant funding that we're working that we have for park improvements, but on an ongoing basis, funding for maintenance and I'll say some nominal improvements at each park or at some parks.
And when is the master plan going to be coming back to us?
You'll be coming. In fact, we intended to have it this month. There were some delays at the consultant side, but likely it could be at the end of this month or early March, coming to the board with an update. We are at what we're calling the engagement window 2. There will be a public survey. Actually, we just posted on social media the beginning of that yesterday for a survey to get public input on what are the needs that we have. But yeah, that will be coming here very soon for the status of the master plan effort for parks, recreation, and trails.
Okay.
Have to add those, the full
Yes.
3.
Yeah, so if you want to meet with him offline and talk more about the budget, because we already have that presentation coming up, so it should be adequate. Supervisor Sabatier?
And I just want to jump off of something Director Lars mentioned about the capital improvements. Did offer and didn't happen to put in $1 million. We had a lot of rollover from the previous year. I think we do need to look at growing some sort of foundation for this. As Supervisor Green mentioned, the overall number is a very large number. We're not going to get all that money for free. We're probably going to have to do some sort of match, and that match is probably not going to be a small amount that they're going to be requesting. And so I think if we can slowly increase some sort of reserve for these projects to make sure they happen. I know that the city of Clear Lake is already doing that. I'm certain the city of Lakeport is looking at that, and I think we as an equal partner in a potential JPA in the future, we need to come into play with something rather than saying, we're here.
Right.
So I hope that we continue those conversations.
Okay, and I'm glad to hear that. I want to make sure, at least for the administrative side of things, that when I use the term reserve, I may not be using the right, I'm not speaking about it in a financial way because that means something specific, but essentially I think a capital
Savings
reserve
account.
is the best way to say it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, so Supervisor Sabatier mentioned the North Shore, so I wanted to, I know you and I have talked about potential areas or something along those lines, possibly transportation. I think just from history, I know in a situation with the previous initiative, voting on a tax either way. I know that having an earmark is very important, whatever it may be, and I don't know where that comes from, if it comes from us or the JPA recommends it, but it is an important factor. So I think that might help with the survey, right? You're still conducting that, so. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because I know after a different initiative failed, the community was like, there was nothing in it for us, so it's very important to have that.
Great.
So.
And I'll carry that back. And that won't come as new information to the group, but I'll carry that back and emphasize that. What we don't have at our fingertips is something to the level of what's in the feasibility study for those other proposed or ideaed facilities. I know that's not a real word, but we don't have anything for a facility on the North Shore or proposed improvements to the Middletown pool. We don't have those available, but I think we need to start. So I'll take that as that's the whole point of the direction to staff. Take that as marching orders.
Right. So as long as they know that when and if the vote comes, they know that there's something set. So that
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so, sorry, go ahead.
So if you can clarify for me, the only kind of opportunity we have to even do a comparison of what potentially this could be would be the Middletown pool, right? Is that the only pool that the county owns where the tickets are sold? It's got the pool, it's got the tennis court, and I think the playground, is that part of county-owned property
is.
there too? Because it's right all up to the school. So that's the only operated facility that we have. So I would just suggest maybe having that, if we're going to have an offline conversation, that's kind of the only thing that you can really compare it to that we're doing from the county side.
Well, and if I could offer that's what was envisioned in the feasibility study. I've stepped back from calling it an aquatic center because I think people might think we're building Marine World. We're not. We're talking about a pool here. Now, the pool in Middletown is a kind of a community pool. It's a relatively recreational pool. What was envisioned initially in this through the feasibility study was more of a competitive level pool to get and there are certain size requirements for that for competition level swimming. There's also been discussion of other opportunities for competition there, but it was on a larger scale. It was more of a regional basis. It includes a lot of indoor facilities there. Maybe a room for parties. I'd be happy to come back, and actually it is included in the attachment, some of the feasibility studies that show the concept of that facility, but it is at a much larger scale than what is.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I'm sorry but it doesn't mean that couldn't be revisited to ensure that the scope matches the need.
No, I'm not talking about scope. I know it's going to cost to run the facility. So I think for just a reality opportunity is to look at, all right, what does the Middletown pool do? Because they do sell, right? Tickets are
Correct.
sold.
Yes, yes.
And uses happen. It does have the ability to be rented. I don't think it happens a lot, but I know.
Right.
We personally rented the pool. You have to get the insurance. You have to pay for the hours. You have to pay for the lifeguard. You can do those types of things for private parties there. So, just if we're going to really look at it and say, all right, well, what could this aquatic center be? What would it cost? Looking at that, I think, is the only income-based pool that we have in the county that we operate. So all I'm saying is if we're looking at things budget-wise, that, yeah, it's a very small snapshot. It's nothing like what you're going to build, but you can look at that and say, all right, what's the reality of that? And I know we're talking about the tax measure, but I've been on this board and we had an unsuccessful tax measure that which was just kind of evening out the taxes from the cities to the county, the unincorporated areas that did not pass. So anyway, just looking at those long-term opportunities. So I'll just
I think
throwing it out there as a suggestion of, it's nothing like what we're going to build, but here's the reality of what's happening right now with that pool. And it does operate. A lot of kids, I know I've been to it. I think most of the board members, I know at least 3 have been there. I've heard comments. I don't know if the rest have been there during the summer, but it's used. But what is that opportunity from a profit level to keep it going? So
No, I appreciate that clarity. And
so that's all was my comment.
Supervisor Green?
I think everyone will be thankful I have not yet been splashing around in the pool. I'm thinking that. So to the vision of this recreation study, so you're right, aquatic center sounds big, and it is big. And without speaking for the various people that have been pushing so hard for it, I don't want to like say, oh, that's never going to happen. I want to acknowledge the vision, the largest part of the vision that is in that feasibility study. And if you haven't had a chance to go through all 163 slides, it's interesting. And it's kind of modular. So the biggest part of the ask would be basically one aquatic center that would be sufficient to really do some exciting things for the county as a whole. Maybe that is too much and we would have to split that in half. And so how do we serve the sides of the county with smaller facilities? And then we kind of keep devolving down to, well, Middletown has a pool. Well, Lakeport hasn't had a pool for at least 10, 20 years or whatever it takes. So there's a definite need in Lakeport, definite need in Clear Lake and what have you, definite need in the North Shore. So there's any number of ways you can slice and dice this. But the genesis of this latest recreation study is focused on an aquatic center, is focused on that bigger vision. And I do think it's a heavy lift, but I don't know that I can immediately say, oh, we just got to slice it down to a community pool for each district and we'll do a JPA on that. I don't know that that wins with the voters any more than the broader vision for an aquatic center does. So I just want to be respectful to the ideas and the people that brought us this far. I want to keep calling it aquatic center just because that seems to be the focus of this recreation study, more so than other types of recreational amenities. So, when it comes back, I want to make sure we stay realistic in terms of what we do with our community pools if it ends up going in that direction. But I also want to be honest and true to the vision that brought us here, true to the vision that the people who brought us this far have and acknowledge that. I still think it's a heavy lift. I think 5 community pools will be a heavy lift too. So we'll see where that discussion goes. But I just don't want to throw in the towel on the aquatic center concept just because I do think it is the biggest of the asks and probably the most expensive of the asks. I think the JPA is kind of ministerial and we can kind of see where the discussion goes. But just trying to highlight a little bit of the history of this recreation thing as I understand it. I may be explaining it badly, but it's both. We need recreational facilities around the lake that people can get behind in terms of a sales tax measure or other type of revenues. But we also need kind of big attractions that this county just doesn't have an opportunity for, and that students and community members in larger cities really do enjoy quite a bit. And so the aquatic center, I think, is a proper name for that. So let's just see where the discussion takes us.
Supervisor Sabatier?
I just want to clarify, I don't think anybody demoted the aquatic center.
Nope.
I think we've already had those conversations, and we've agreed to look for a competitive style aquatic center to provide a place for swimming meets to occur in Lake County. But the idea is, if we're going to be doing anything that requires voters to approve something, to look at ways to also, not in place of, but to also ensure to provide to others so that we can get those votes, because if we don't provide to others, it's going to be a hard lift, and at that point, it probably would not pass is my belief. And so that's why we've been kind of harping on, let's make sure not to forget the other more remote locations. It's not to replace, it's in addition to, which does add a burden, but at the same time, we can't forget the people that don't have access to those areas that we're originally speaking of.
Okay, I'll open it up for the public. I don't see anybody in the chambers oh, we do have one hand up. Mr. Pettis. If you can state your name, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Mr. Pettis, and I run a group of All Children's Thrive at Clear Lake High School and within Lakeport. I know that a few of you are familiar with that group. I do have a group of students who are very interested in the construction of either a recreational center or an aquatic center, and they would love to give public comment on this topic in the future, as well as give their input into the design. So I'm absolutely going to be informing them of the survey that Mr. Ewing already did, but I would like to make a request that the meeting set up for the end of February or March be timed so that I can allow my students, pull them out of class and give them an opportunity to speak to you guys directly if no one would be opposed to that in the future?
Definitely not opposed.
Yeah.
All right. If I could respond.
But that was for the Parks Task Force.
Well, it could be for
Yeah.
both, to be honest, but, and actually, it would be appropriate to have it timed, in my opinion, for
Yep.
the master plan effort countywide, but also for the formation of the JPA is when that would be coming back. So from a staff perspective, there's no reason not to time either one. And I wanted to just clarify on the survey, it is forthcoming. There's two moving parts. The Parks, Recs, and Trails Master Plan, there is a survey going out now. That's already out. But specific to the item that we're discussing, there is a polling effort that is in development, and that will be going on, but that's not a put out to the public at large and respond to whoever wants. No, that's a polling effort that is quite a bit different than surveys. So I apologize if I confused anyone with the discussion of both of those.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Supervisor Spatier?
And just real quick, I'll share Mr. Pettis's contact information with you. That way he and his students can have access to the material.
Great.
And make sure that they have time to look at it and review for their comments.
Wonderful, thank you.
Supervisor Green?
And yeah, to the last speaker, we'll love to see the students here at the board. They love to see them at the city council. I know this for a fact. And you don't have to pull them out of class to do that. That's an evening meeting. And same thing for the school board, who I think would probably be on the hook for any JPA agreement that we move forward. So love to see the advocacy. Want to make sure we spread the wealth to our city and school partners. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Lars.
right,
Appreciate
thank
the
you very much.
presentation.